Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay. Just have to breathe that one in, don't we? Just amazing things. One of the ways that we do amazing things is by really knowing and working with that internal spirit. And we've been spending the last several weeks looking at the concept of affirmative prayer, or how we connect with and work with the power that is. You know, we talked about the 5 steps of our affirmative prayer in detail. In fact, we spent the whole month of August doing that. And while I say that, if you ever want to go back and re-listen to any of the talks, all of our talks are on YouTube, by the way. So if you don't know that, there are connections on the Suncoast Facebook page and stuff like that. You can go back and catch up. And this affirmative prayer series, I think, has been really powerful, because not only have we talked about the 5 steps, but we spent a Sunday exploring our spiritual energy and how we direct that in our affirmative prayers. And then last Sunday, remember, we talked about opening ourselves up to divine ideas, and that often our prayers are answered by these inspirational ideas that kind of come through us. Well, today we're going to look at how affirmative prayer helps us realign our thoughts to the truth with a capital T, the truth. And that realignment is actually what gives our prayers the power to manifest, the power to create real change in our lives. And once we've remembered this spiritual truth in our prayers, we can move forward in a sense of completion. And that's a really powerful part. You know, last Sunday I talked about a seed, and that contained within the seed is everything necessary to bring forth the entire plant. And we know that if we want to bring forth the plant from the seed, what do we have to do? We have to put it in the fertile ground. We've got to water it. We've got to nurture it and let the natural process unfold, if that's what we want to do. And affirmative prayer or spiritual mind treatment is very, very similar. A treatment is a seed that we kind of plant in the soil of creative mind, or the one mind of divine intelligence. And our responsibility is to plant the seed with the greatest amount of conviction. We've got to believe confidently in the law, in the creative mind, to kind of pick up that seed and produce our result. We have to feel the same sense of completion that a gardener might feel when that gardener puts that seed in the ground. That confidence that when I put that seed in there, I know that the soil and the water and the powers that be or whatever will work with me to produce the plant that I am wanting, or the result. I have to have the conviction that the law will cooperate with me to produce the results. So Ernest Holmes wrote a lot about this, and this was really the core teaching of the science of mind, is that we can participate with this law to create our lives. So in the Science of Mind textbook, it says this: always come to a complete conclusion when giving a treatment. Always feel that it is done, complete, and perfect, giving thanks for the answer as if it were already objectified. And this is what he goes on to say. He says, each treatment should be repeated daily until a healing takes place. If it takes 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, or 5 years, the treatment must be kept up until a healing is accomplished. Now remember, in Susan's reading, she talked about what a healing is. A healing really is a revealing of that truth. But sometimes I wonder about that. Sometimes I wonder, well, okay, I've said my prayer, I've affirmed this new thing in my mind, this new thought, so why hasn't anything kind of popped into my experience yet? You know, sometimes things seem to change in our lives almost instantly, and sometimes it feels like it takes forever. It takes forever for things to change. So how can I feel that sense of completion when I don't really know that it's done? Okay? How do I do that? So think about a time in your experience when you've completed something and you know it is done completely. And you know it immediately. You just know it's done. So maybe, for example, you put that little final jigsaw puzzle piece in and you're like, ooh, it's done. It's done. I don't have to go back to that. It's done. I can just kind of sit back in satisfaction. Or perhaps you put the cherry on top of the dessert. You know, the whole dessert's made, the cherry's on, and it's ready to eat. It's done. You've got that sense that it's done. You've turned your homework in. Done. Done. You're done. You know you're done. Because that's one type of experience that we have, right? We know it's done. But we also have other experiences. So think about a time when you thought that something was done, only to find out it really wasn't. So good examples like you unclog a drain. You unclog it, it's ready, it's done. But then like about a week later, it's backed up again, it's clogged again. You weren't quite done. You know, you work out a solution with a colleague and you think you're done, and then someone walks up and presents an opinion you hadn't thought about, and you're like, oh, back to the drawing board. You know, you're not quite done. Not quite done, even though I thought it was done. So we all can have both of those types of experiences in our lives. And these different types of experiences happen in our prayer life too. You know, remember the example I gave last week when I was talking about I wanted to move from Dallas to Atlanta, and that was what I wanted. And remember, Kelsey had her little doctor's appointment and all of that, and I made the decision, I'm doing it, I'm moving back to Atlanta. And I treated for like a smooth transition home. And it was just boom, boom, boom. Those jigsaw puzzle pieces kind of fell into place, and 3 months later, I'm living in a different city. House bought, sold, done, I'm done, I'm out. All right, so it was like treatment, prayer work, just making the mind up, done, right? But I've also had these other experiences. I've also had experiences with prayers where I find myself coming back to it over and over again. And I often wonder, how much truth does it take? And that's the title of my talk this morning. How much truth does it take? So let me tell you about one of these drain plugging kind of experiences that I've had in my life. And it's been playing out in my life with my younger brother for decades, actually. So I have two brothers. One of them is 2 years older than me, and one of them is 2 years younger than me. And my younger brother has had a lifelong experience with addiction and mental health issues. And I can tell you that his life can sometimes appear quite chaotic and very upsetting to me. And not only just to me, but upsetting to other people who witness his life and his experiences. And as you can imagine, I just love him dearly. I love my brother so much. And I've always wanted better things for him, always. But I've wanted for him to have better living situations, more stability. I wanted him to have better employment and better relationships. And I've tried everything I know how to do to help my younger brother, including prayer. And when I think about my prayers for my little brother, I know that I've had to fine-tune my prayers over the years. His name is Ron. And I think early on my path of spirituality and praying for my brother Ron, I prayed diligently for his recovery, for his stability, for his life to kind of come together, for his life to actually start looking like a life that I could relate to or understand or approve of, if I'm really quite honest. I wanted to be able to stop worrying about him. That's what it really was. I wanted to be able to stop worrying about him. However, if I really looked closely at my prayers, I realized back then that my prayers were based on this absolute false idea that his life was somehow wrong or broken. I had decided that his kind of life experience was not okay. My life experiences were okay, but his weren't, right? So what needed healing was my mind about those beliefs. That's what needed healing. I wanted peace of mind, and I was believing that the only way for me to have it was for my brother's life to look different. believed that the only way I could love my brother was for him to change. I wanted my prayers answered and for him to have stability and groceries and health and all that stuff. And my mind was holding steadfast to those beliefs. And guess what? Those beliefs were showing up in my prayers. I'm sure you can relate to that. I know I'm not the only one here who wishes someone else's life would be different so that I can feel happy. I know I'm not happy. So we all believe from time to time that the truth is that our happiness is dependent on things outside of ourselves being different. But that is not the truth. Because that's like saying peace cannot exist, that joy cannot be, that freedom is not real if something on a human level is kind of wackadoo, right? The truth, with a capital T, and actually capital R-U-T-H too. The truth is that God is everywhere present. So that means love is everywhere present. Peace is everywhere present, just waiting our recognition. Joy is always available, regardless of what's going on. I was denying that spiritual truth in my prayers about my brother. Ron and his human experiences are encapsulated in the one. And guess what? My prayers were not manifesting as Ron's life changing. Ron continued to struggle, and I continued to suffer as I witnessed all of it. And it took years for me to wake up to this truth of spirit. I was probably walking around kind of sulking that my prayers for my brother wasn't being answered, and that my prayers were being answered. They just weren't in alignment with ultimate truth. I had to work to see the truth of God despite the evidence appearing as wrong circumstances. So now when my mental drain gets plugged up, again with all those false beliefs and toilet paper and whatever else, my prayers are now to know the truth with a capital T, that Ron's life experiences are for him. They're for him and for divine guidance for myself in my interactions with him. Spirit, help guide my conversation with him. Help me show light and love, no matter what it looks like. And I think it's a fair question that I ask myself. How much truth does it take, Laine? How much truth does it take? And here's the deal. Me knowing this truth for myself changes my experience of Ron's life. I get to be poised, my favorite word. I get to be poised and more at peace and loving, even when he's incarcerated, or even when he's unstable, even when he's struggling to manage his circumstances. I get to be loving and poised. If Ron's life is going to change, he will have to awaken to a better understanding of his own self. The truth has to be awakened in him. I know that he exists in the same world that I do. A world of joy and peace and harmony and connection and stability are his when he's in alignment with that. And I know that he's on a journey to figure that out for himself. And it may take longer than this lifetime for him to get there, but I still pray for peace. And with practice, I can step away from my prayer for truth to be evident in my life and in Ron's life with a sense of completion. No matter what crosses my path, I can return to that prayer and recenter myself in consciousness. And you might say, well, you're just sticking your head in the sand. You're just pretending that everything is okay. And it might be okay for you, but what about your brother? What about out in the world around us? Things are not okay. And my answer to that is this from the Science of Mind textbook. Right thought, constantly poured into consciousness, will eventually purify it. Discord might be likened to a bottle of impure water. Healing might be likened to the process of dropping pure water into the bottle, a drop at a time, until the whole is clean and pure. My job as a spiritual being, your job, is to keep dropping pure truth into the world. One drop at a time, one prayer at a time, one action at a time. And the truth is that I am dropping into the world and into my brother's life. And that truth is that God is love, and that this is serving you because it is an outpicturing, an evidence of your beliefs and your choices and your actions. Each person gets to look at the evidence of their beliefs and choices and decide whether or not to change their actions. Each person gets to do that. And the only person's actions we can change, the only person's thoughts we can change, the only person's choices we can change are our own. And in the middle of our actions and beliefs and thoughts and choices, we can hold fast to the truth of spiritual law and the truth of the love of God. We can dedicate our entire lifetimes to this truth. How much truth will it take? It might take our whole lifetime of truth and many more lifetimes. But do we stop? No. We keep praying affirmatively, acting in alignment with truth, dropping in the right thought. And we do this in big stuff and small stuff. Susan, one of our practitioners, was very recently in a similar experience to one of the CSL ministers, and I was telling her about this. And they were both having the experience of a cat in an almost identical health situation, which they were treating with prayer and medicine. The minister tells her story this way, Susan. Let's see if it matches yours. Here's what she said. She said, "My cat, Colette, developed diabetes. The vet told me I had to give her insulin shots twice a day." Sound familiar? Yeah. Every 12 hours. And I had to measure the sugar in her urine by dipping a stick into her excretions once a day. I knew that the cure wasn't going to happen with the insulin, and I was determined to have the diagnosis go away completely. Sound familiar? Yeah. But when I saw the amount of sugar on the measuring stick, I wondered how I was going to know the truth while I was looking at the evidence of the disease. And it came into my head in a flash that what I was measuring with the dipstick was how much more truth I needed to know. So as I began treating and giving her the insulin shots, I saw the amount of sugar going down on the measuring stick. But I chose to tell myself, this is measuring how much truth I need to know through spiritual mind treatment. So when the sugar measurement was down halfway, I said I was halfway there in knowing the truth. Suffice it to say, over time, I reached 0 on the stick, and in consciousness, I knew a greater truth that all was well. The vet informed me after a month the cat no longer needed insulin injections, and after 2 months, she no longer had diabetes. Sound familiar? Yeah. Really, this was not Sherman's story, Sherman and Susan's story. It was amazing. But the minister knew that a greater consciousness was needed in this situation. And she persisted in her treatments until the evidence presented itself and she could sit back and say, the puzzle's done, it is done. See, prayer works in many different kinds of situations. And persistence is the key. So in order to get the results that we want in our lives, that we desire, sometimes determination and persistency and consistency is what is required. And whenever I need to get inspired to remain dedicated to something that I desire, I often turn to the world of sports, for example. So I don't know, last weekend Becky and I watched the women's final of the US Open tennis tournament. Anybody watch that match?
Yes.
Yeah, it was cool. We witnessed a young 20-year-old Japanese athlete named Naomi Osaka win her first Grand Slam tournament and the first one to ever be won by a Japanese person. So when Osaka was interviewed, she related the story. She told the story of sitting way up in the nosebleed section at Arthur Ashe Stadium. No, it's not Arthur Ashe. Yeah, it is Arthur Ashe Stadium, yeah. Way up in the nosebleed section, watching the US Open as a child, watching Serena Williams win that tournament, and dreaming in her mind of playing one day on that court. She would love to play Serena, but she just wanted to play on that court. And over the years and years of training and sacrifices, last weekend she took the court and she beat her idol, Serena Williams, just as she had dreamed. So not only did she build her muscles over the years, not only did she perfect her serve and her ground strokes, she built her belief in her ability to play big, to compete at the most elite levels of the sport. She knew that higher truth for herself. She held steady to that truth, even when she was eliminated from every single tournament she entered. She was eliminated until last weekend. And despite the evidence to the contrary, she claimed her truth every step along the way. In her interview after the match, she said that she imagined it was just another practice, and it didn't matter who was on the other end of the court. She was just doing what she did every day. How much truth did it take for her to hold on and know that she would one day live out the manifestation of her good? When you've decided to change a condition through spiritual mind treatment, don't give up on your first or your third or your 100th treatment. Don't give up. Trust that your spiritual work is directing the universal law, and that there is an endpoint which will demonstrate your harvest. The truth, your truth, will set you free. So the question to ask yourself when a treatment does not seem to be manifesting is, what do I believe more than what I'm praying for? What do I believe more than the spiritual truth? Or what is the evidence around me that shows me what I believe more? Because once you can start affirming your highest truth, spiritual law will take that seed and manifest it to a full expression in your life experience. And as one of our great ministers said, never desert principle, not even for a special occasion. How much truth does it take? The whole truth and nothing but the truth.